Europe has taken in a lot of people who do not share your values at all.
I think absolutely we'll see more diplomatic fireworks on Monday. It's been interesting to see the left sort of bring back this like 1964 level boomer nostalgia for free speech.
Here is Washington Free Beacon's John Levine and host of the Afterparty with Emily Jashinsky. Emily Jashinsky. Right, well, it's a nice day for a White House wedding. Have a look at this. Won't you look at that? That's Dan Scarino, wait, assistant to the president. He's the social media brains behind Donald Trump's very, very, very powerful social media presence. And he's surprised, maybe faked, I don't know. But that's him and his fiancée having their White House engagement. Now, it's not just the Rose Garden that's been paved over and turned into a Mar-a-Lago-style dining club. Behind the scenes, we see, with this presidency, a remarkable amount of access through Instagram, TikTok, social media. There's an Instagrammer-in-chief, Margot Martin, Trump's comms advisor, who seems to sort of follow him around, literally almost live streaming his day and bypassing the traditional US media and giving remarkable insights to this administration. Emily, I'm going to come to you. Is this a deliberate tactic, or is this just, are they trying to basically cut out traditional media and cut out the more hostile elements of the press and feed them with this sort of packaged, made-up content, ready, which, some of it quite heartwarming?
It's absolutely intentional, and some of it's really, really smart in ways that Democrats have not been willing to quite admit. We don't see anything similar. I mean, maybe only from Zohran Mamdani, but we don't see any similar social media efforts, especially ones that are successful coming from Democratic candidates. And part of it is exactly as you're saying. They have people whose jobs it is to follow the president and create content, but he just has a knack for media and content himself. People will tell you behind the scenes he's actually to some extent orchestrating the shots and understands just the logistics of getting good content. So I don't know that anybody on the right or the left will ever do it quite as well as the Trump administration.
There's a remarkable clip that went viral of him sitting down when he sort of arrived at an interview and he was moving the table and moving the water. He's fundamentally a TV guy. And I think he was in one of the Oval Office sprays the other day where he was basically saying, I've been told to keep everything I say very clipped and short for TikTok. Obviously, the TikTok executive order seems to have been signed tonight. He loves it so much, he's basically bought it. Where does this go, though, in terms of, John, I'll come to you. Where does this go in terms of, call me old-fashioned, but in terms of scrutiny and holding politicians to account, having pool photographers, pool reporters in the building in order to actually work out what is propaganda and what is actual journalism. This seems to really slightly blur, not to be too po-faced about it, does seem to slightly blur the line between the two, right?
Well, I mean, it shows that all three of us are slowly sliding towards irrelevancy. And as someone who's been in the
your
White
words,
House
not mine.
Pool, I don't want to name call, but as someone that's been in the White House pool, I can tell you it does sometimes feel very, very antiquated, because the whole point is, well, you're there because if something happens, you're with the president, so he can address the press. But now the president could just tweet or post something on X. He could go on to Truth Social. There's a million other ways he can reach the American public by bypassing the traditional media. And yes, it will result in a loss of scrutiny, because at the end of the day, when you just shove the press briefings full of social media sycophants, you're not going to get the same kind of coverage that you would with, more mainstream press. And I know the mainstream press has problems. I'm not defending the mainstream press, but it's not going to be fun when, you have President AOC and everyone in the briefing room is just, Red Scare or Hassan Piker and some of those freak shows.
Emily, you think it's going too far?
Well, I mean, I think it's counterbalanced, from my opinion, in the way the new media pool seat, and I've been in the new media pool seat. I actually think it's fantastic, and it should be a program that's expanded. I hope it stays on the left. I feel like it's a great sort of compromise between the old way and the new way, and you can tell some of the old school reporters are really rankled by the new media reporters who are there, get the first question at certain briefings, and are able to ask. Some of them are, there's no question, some of those have been totally sycophantic, but I think in theory, at least, I hope a Democratic administration, they're welcome to bring in the Pod Save America guys. That's fine. But they should also, bring in, I think the Trump administration has had zero hedge in that seat, people who aren't always uncritical. So I hope that continues in the future, because I think that has been a really good compromise between new and old.
Yeah, no, I have to say as well, in terms of, I've been covering the White House for the last 3 months, the amount of access there is, though, and in terms of, this is a president that does not shy away from answering questions. I think there was one day where he did sort of 4.5 hours on the record in a single day, and if you add that up, that's more than Joe Biden did on the record in his last few months in office. Let's move on to another issue that's been sort of bubbling up in terms of free speech. This feels like this week, post Charlie Kirk's funeral, actually on Sunday, it feels to me like the Trump base has been more happy to criticise the administration this week on the fundamentals of free speech. We've had lots of prominent figures, everyone from Tucker Carlson downwards. They came out very hard on Pam Bondi when she suggested criminalising hate speech. The Jimmy Kimmel row has been, sort of bubbling over throughout the week. John, are we seeing the sort of base slightly flex their muscles, and is the administration pressing the wrong buttons on an issue that they're going to bite back on?
Trump voters are not a monolith, and they're not just mindless people going into the voting booth. I mean, President Trump won the election on a set of very specific promises, and one of them was to release all the Epstein files. You can go watch the clips of Trump saying he would do that. And so then when they turn around and his DOJ, which said it's on my desk, all of a sudden there's no Epstein files. Yeah, a lot of Trump voters are going to have a problem with that. And free speech was another obvious platform where the right, which has been so discriminated against by progressives when they are in power, and then for Republicans to come into power and even suggest and dance around doing some of those same practices, it's just bad business. And you cannot become what you hate, because then you destroy yourself.
I think that's a quote from Star Wars, isn't it?
I forget who said that. It could be Star Wars. Something like that.
Emily, I never thought I'd live to see the day that Bernie Sanders would be positively tweeting about Tucker Carlson and Candace Owen. Candace Owen has been saying some pretty wacko stuff this week, but it seems to have horseshoed around and united the left and the right.
It's been interesting to see the left sort of bring back this 1964 level boomer nostalgia for free speech, and how the hippie generation was romantic about it, because that has been absent from politics for at least a decade. And I think a lot of it is, just shot through with double standards and all of that. But Bernie Sanders, I think, is one of the people from that generation, and I wish he would have led on this over the last 10 years. Unfortunately, he did not. He largely took a back seat and wants to reassert himself now. So listen, I'm glad that we still have this social consensus that free speech is good for now. And I think you see that when a Bernie Sanders is willing to go out on a limb. But he took a back seat in the last decade in a way that makes it hard for me to pat him on the back now. We had former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson on the show last night. He had a bit of a pop at J.D. Vance. He said he was sick of being lectured about free speech by the Americans until they got their own house in order. He then went on to quote at length the Bible. So I think he knew what he was doing. John, I mean, there is a massive slice of hypocrisy in this debate on all sides, really. Free speech until everyone gets upset about what they don't want people to say. Do you think that Britain, we've been well versed on the problems in Britain of being arresting for tweets and the like. Is America in a position to lecture on this?
Well, I want America to be in a position to lecture on this. And that's why the Jimmy Kimmel stuff was so frustrating, because we really can't go to Europe and talk about free speech there when our own head of the FCC is promising retribution for comments on a television show that he didn't like. And what Jimmy said was false and it was wrong. But if you want to lead on free speech internationally, and certainly among our allies, you need to demonstrate it here at home. So I watched your clip with Boris, and he said a lot of other stuff that was a bunch of rubbish. But on that particular score, he was correct. And I would like to see the U.S. be a stronger advocate for free speech here consistently, so we can better lecture you silly Europeans, because you guys are in a bad way. You're not going to save the West if you don't preserve free speech.
It was an interview that seemed to have upset and annoyed and actually delighted almost all people. The lefties loved the attack on Vance. The righties hated his defence of his border policy. So I think we'll chalk that one up of the week, guys. So it's my last show of the week. It's been a crazy one. Emily, what was your moment of the week? Mine was certainly watching the fallout from the UN escalator gate. That was my favourite. That was just an astonishing moment. Do you think is he going to leave it there? Is he going to pursue the UN? As Jesse Waters say on Fox News, will the Trump administration be bombing Midtown Manhattan by the end of next week?
Well, there are people in the Trump administration whose job it is to coordinate and work with the UN, and I guarantee you they are going to press the UN for some type of internal, it may end up just being symbolic, but some type of internal investigation into that leak about them considering pranking Trump with potential
my colleague
escalator
Katie Balls at the Times got that one. It's a good one.
Yep, that's right. So I think they're gonna press the UN to get to the bottom of that.
John House, I mean, I was still slightly reeling from that speech. I know he didn't have his auto cue because that will teleprompter, as you guys would call it. And he didn't have that as part of the conspiracy, and the microphones were allegedly turned down, according to some reports. The content of the speech, though, was still pretty crazy. What was your take on it?
Iconic, and I'll tell you, as someone as a veteran of many Trump speeches, I've been in the spot where I can see the teleprompter, and you can tell when it goes in ad lib because the prompter is just gone. It's frozen, and he'll go into some story about Al Capone or whatever it may be, and then he eventually gets back to the teleprompter. So he's very, very capable of winging it and ad libbing. But it was iconic, and I mean, I don't know how much practical value it will have, but seeing the president of the United States tell all of these world leaders, your countries are in a very bad way, and especially with respect to Europe, he notably didn't name specific countries, but as everyone else, both of you know, Europe has taken in a lot of people who do not share your values at all. They're not European. They don't care to even assimilate to your values. They won't learn your languages, and you have no mechanism to do anything about that. So that he correctly diagnosed that issue, and he's trying to stop it from happening here.
The UN is essentially a fairly useless talking shop. I mean, not least the Security Council, but the UNGA, the General Assembly particularly. Emily, are we seeing that Donald Trump, unless he changes the Constitution, as the Democrats guests earlier were suggesting he might try and do? This is Donald Trump, unleashed. He doesn't have to worry about re-election anymore. He's definitely punchier in terms on the diplomatic stage than he was during Trump. I'd say, taking the fight directly to his, to the two countries at the UN. Are we going to see more and more of this?
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about this in terms of baseball, which is, he's swinging for the fences at the bottom of the ninth inning. And I think that's what we saw with the UN speech is this guy wants a Nobel Peace Prize. He thinks he deserves a Nobel Peace Prize. And so in his quest to get a Nobel Peace Prize, he is going to start offering these structural, foundational criticisms of the geopolitical elite because he knows that they don't really like him, but he's trying to make it to the point where they can't ignore him. And a lot of it is like trying to brand himself as a peacemaker. And I think that's what we saw at the UN this week.
With Netanyahu arriving at the White House on Monday, Donald Trump tonight saying he's going to lay down the law on the West Bank. Can we see some more fireworks, diplomatic fireworks, Emily, on Monday, do you think?
I think absolutely we'll see more diplomatic fireworks on Monday, partially because of what we were talking about earlier, which is that Trump brings the press into a lot of these bilateral meetings. And you see the press then coming in and asking tough questions that Trump then chimes in. It's always crazy during these bilaterals in the second Trump administration because everyone just it's almost a free-for-all.
I mean, John, we saw today the Turkish president was told he knows a thing or two about rigged elections. I mean, this is not normal diplomacy, is it? Is there method to this madness? Or is this just the greatest show on earth for hacks like us?
My truthful response to that is I don't know, which is not something you're ever supposed to say.
No, we're here to ask the big questions.
I don't know what this is. I hope it's 7D chess. I hope there's a grand plan behind everything, and that Turkey's going to come in and save the day in Israel and help with Syria. And he's just like, yeah, you conquered Syria. We're going all over the place with that. And I'm imagining that sweet woman sitting next to Erdogan translating this into his ear during that. But it's wild, and we live in an incredible era of radical transparency. You can call the president of the United States on his cell phone.
Let's get him on the show.
His number is out there, and I have called him, and he has picked up. He will pick up on the first ring.
Well, I think we'll do that. We'll do that live on the show 1 week, maybe on the after party. Let's get him out in some way. Guys, I'll see you in DC next week where I'll be returning. John, Emily, great stuff.